Good afternoon. Welcome to our Mondays with EFTI.Talk, the Erica Friedheim Tourism Institute, Department of Tourism, Hospitality, and Event Management, and the Dean Mike Rees, Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access Council in the College of Health and Human Performance at the University of Florida, is presenting to you EFTI and IDEA.Talk. Focus on the story of our own HHP-THEM alumna, Chynna Clanton, about her story from Gainesville to the White House. So I would like to take a moment to introduce our today's speaker, Chynna Clanton. So Chynna Clanton is currently the Office of Barack and Michelle Obama, Director of Travel and Event Operations and Body Woman to Michelle Obama. She's essentially Michelle Obama's right-hand woman, helping Mrs. Obama connect with communities around the world. Chynna ensures every detail of Mrs. Obama's personal and public-facing events are executed flawlessly. Directing teams who coordinate Mrs. Obama's domestic and international engagements. Originally from Miami, Florida, Chynna is a Florida girl through and through. She was raised in a single-parent household on the outskirts of Liberty City, Florida. Chynna attended the University of Florida, where she received a dual degree in event management and political science, and a minor in business. As a senior at the University of Florida, she landed a White House internship during the fall of 2010. After a few years in government relations at the Walt Disney Company, she made her way back to the Obamas and has been with the Obamas ever since. Chynna has been featured in O Magazine, Essence Magazine, and the Miami Herald, the University of Florida Health and Human Performance Magazine, the Netflix documentary Becoming, and most recently, the Michelle Obama's Spotify podcast. She strives every day to be an inspiration for young girls who look like her. Thank you so much, Chynna, for taking time to spend your wonderful our wonderful hour with us. So now we have a list of questions actually submitted by our students and the interested audience already. So the first one is tell us about yourself, especially about your style, what your brand is, what makes you stand out, and how you empower yourself.
Yes. So as you mentioned, Dr. Fu, I'm originally from Miami, Florida. I grew up in a single parent household, and my mother and my grandmothers were pretty much the community that raised me. I honestly wouldn't be who I am today without those two. I think at my core, my style, I'd have to say I'm an old soul, right? I grew up around a bunch of older women. I was the youngest in my family, and they sit around kitchen tables and on the back porches, and I just soak in all their truths and all their knowledge. So my style is a bit of an old soul, and just to tell you a little bit more about my internship process and how all that came about. So of course, to fulfill the internship requirement for the college, I applied to several internships. One in Atlanta, involving events for the NBA team, the Atlanta Hawks. And then I had also applied to the White House internship while President Obama was in office, at the suggestion of one of the HHP advisors, Sarah, actually. And I'm going to be very honest, the White House internship wasn't my first choice. I just knew that I wanted to live in Atlanta after I graduated, buy a nice house with a lot of land. And Atlanta was the city that was booming at the time. So that was where initially I thought I'd wanted to go. I wanted to go ahead, do that internship, didn't think twice about the White House. And had it not been for my mom actually told me, she's like, this White House internship is the opportunity of a lifetime. When will you ever be able to be a part of history? It's the first African-American administration. She threw in the fact that we also had a cousin who lived in DC that I could stay with rent-free. So that would help us financially as well, because it's an unpaid internship. So when I landed that internship in the fall of 2010, again, it wasn't something that immediately I was just like, this is it. I had to be convinced, believe it or not. But I do credit the internship program and obviously the requirement from HHP, for the success of my career, because I would have never thought to do an internship in the White House ever. So I'm very grateful to Sarah, who informed me about that opportunity, and I was able to seize it. So after the internship, I went on the road doing something called Advance, which I'll make sure I describe a little later, because I think it's a really good field for folks to consider because it is heavily involved with events. But I did a few years at the Walt Disney Company in their government relations office, about 2 years there. And then I received a call while I was there from the Office of the First Lady to become Michelle Obama's body person and trip director. So I was just amazed because, again, I had been, in their world, in their circle, doing Advance, and then out of nowhere, I get this call, which is truly an honor. But once again, I was hesitant to move on because this was towards the latter years of the administration. So I was unsure if I wanted to do that because I knew the administration would come to an end and I would be back on the job hunt following that time. So I was a little nervous because I'm like, I have a really good job here at Disney. I thrive on stability and I crave stability, and I wasn't sure if I should take that next leap. But again, my mother encouraged me, and she's just like, again, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. And I don't want you to hold yourself back from actualizing those dreams. So that's, just a little bit about me. When it comes to my brand, that's a good question. I think I would describe myself as just truly authentic. And I've now come into a place where I'm more comfortable speaking up and using my voice. I've always been a very, very quiet person. I'm opinionated, right? I have opinions on everything, but I keep them to myself. So I've always been a very quiet person. And it wasn't until working with Mrs. Obama that she encouraged me. She's like, you have a lot of things to say and a lot of good things and a lot of good feedback, and you should speak up more. So she encouraged me to kind of, become more comfortable with utilizing my voice and being okay, sharing my story and sharing more about myself. So
that's wonderful. So again, today is March 1st, and
Yes.
March is a Women's History Month. So for you to be right now as our speaker, and you mentioned 2 women in your life, Mrs. Michelle Obama and your mother. And now you become the role model of many, many young female students, many girls who look like you, who really would like to look for other opportunities in White House or in our tourism hospitality event management. You have been doing so wonderfully. Thank you, Chynna.
Oh, thank
so
you.
Now, tell us a little bit about your emotion when you got a phone call from Michelle Obama. What was your reaction?
So I received a phone call from her office, and essentially they were just like, Mrs. Obama has noticed you on the road, and she noticed the hard work that you've been putting in, and she wants to know if you would be interested in being her body person. And I was just, again, in that moment, it was just an honor. But I'll also tell you that after the internship, I'd also applied to numerous positions in the Office of the First Lady, and I was denied every time. But there was something that, told me, like, don't give up, right? Just keep going. There's a reason that, you're being denied in these positions. There's something bigger coming. There's something bigger. Even when I would sit there at my office at Disney, I always felt that the president and the first lady would eventually know me by my first name. I felt something there. And I always figured that I was in the works for something bigger. I've been denied so much, but something was going to pay off eventually. So when I received that phone call, I was like, and here it is. this is exactly what I've been waiting for. You know, none of the other positions were for me, but this one right here was truly meant for me.
Oh, I love it. Always. Yeah. I would say you really have that in your heart. So you don't give up.
No,
Yeah.
no.
And you didn't give up and you look up and
Yes.
the best opportunity came after you because
Absolutely.
you have been so faithful. You are doing everything. So I would say with great responsibility and then with a big champion, always
Yes.
started with a small championship. So
Oh,
congratulations.
yes.
I love your story.
Oh,
So
thank
now
you.
I know you're very humble, but now I want to ask you, what makes you stand out? There were tons of interns, and now you have been the selected one. Tell us about your experiences and what,
Yes.
again, makes you stand out and how you empower yourself.
So I think what makes me or what made me stand out back then was just honestly my work ethic. Um, you know, again, like I said, I was very quiet and, you know, I was always focused on just the task at hand and completing that. I wasn't there for FaceTime. I wasn't there to become, you know, best friends with the president and the first lady. I was just there to do my job and do it, you know, to the fullest because I knew what was on the line. With them being the first African American administration, there was a lot of pressure. There were a lot of eyes on us, so we had to get it right. Um, so, you know, I was just a hard worker. I really, really was. And I was dedicated to ensuring that every event that I was a part of was executed flawlessly. Every detail was thought through. Every person, you know, who walked through the doors, you know, had a great experience from start to finish. So from the moment they picked up a ticket to the moment they parked in the lot to the moment they were in line waiting to get in, you know, and the moment they actually got a chance to hear the president, the first lady, the vice president, or even the second lady at that time, you know, I just needed to ensure that the experience was a full experience. And you know, I think that's one thing that we have to always remember with events. It's the experience doesn't necessarily start when you enter the event space or the room in which the event's happening. It starts in the parking lot. It starts the minute they purchase a ticket, you know? So you want to think through all those kind of details.
That's awesome. I really love your brand. Your brand is your work ethics, and your
Yes.
brand is the quality of excellence you
Yes.
delivered. Love it, love it, love it. So now you have touched on a little bit about how was your career path, but now I think this is a question from one of our students. They would like to know what is the most exciting, memorable experience you can share with us from working with the Obama family.
Yes. So, hmm.
Too many,
So
huh?
I know it's like, let me really think about this. I think one of the most memorable experiences, um, honestly, within my career, was when we hosted our final Black History Month event at the White House in 2016. And we had a day-long workshop centered around dance. And we brought in iconic leaders in dance, such as Debbie Allen, Judith Jamison, Virginia Johnson. And essentially, we filled the halls with local DC students, most of which were young girls of color. And it just meant so much to me to see these little Black girls, you know, little ballerinas dancing beneath the portraits of like George Washington and Martha Washington and dancing in rooms that we were never intended to step foot inside. You know, aside from as the laborers who built the building, we were never intended to actually be there in that way. And I think it was just truly a full circle moment for me. You know, the family has always been about reaching as many people as they can and ensuring that as many people received access to the White House, right? And that these events were as accessible as possible. um, you know, because a lot of people do not get that experience. So it was one of those things where they wanted to make sure those doors were wide open and as many people as could come and enjoy, you know, a White House experience. Um, so I think it was in that moment that I really, or what really resonated with me was we were truly a part of history in that moment. It was such a unique experience to support the Obamas.
I love it. I love it,
Yeah,
especially when you are in charge. You can really direct the opportunities. You
absolutely.
get the opportunities, and you are in charge. And that's how you were able, and you are still able, and you will continue to be able to utilize all the opportunities to make history. So
Oh, yes.
that's the best. It's not only ordinary experiences, but we are talking about the life-changing experiences that
Absolutely.
you are creating. Love
Absolutely. And that experience was definitely life-changing for those students that day, for sure.
it. Yes.
And Dr. Fu, I did want to talk a little bit about Advance
Yes,
because it was a
please.
huge part of my career path, and I want to make sure the students know about this opportunity, if you don't mind.
Oh, I don't mind at all.
Okay.
That's why you are here. I want you to tell our students, I want you to tell our 52,000, 55,000 students, everybody, they all should come to join us and choose this as their major. Okay, now, Chynna, you're on.
So after the White House internship, I eventually went on to do something called Advance for the Obamas and the Bidens. And quite honestly, it allowed me to utilize both of my degrees. I'd never thought I'd had that opportunity. So the event management side and obviously the political science side. And going into the internship, I had no idea what Advance was. I just knew that in the description, it mentioned events. And I came to learn that Advance is essentially the event planning arm of the White House, but on the road. So outside of the physical White House itself, right? We do all the events, across the country, internationally, anything outside of the actual White House. So essentially, we were the people behind the scenes who handle all of the logistics for political and government events, all the principals' movements, so coordinating their every step, which hallways they'll go through, which elevators they'll take. And so I went on the road for all principals, and we call them principals. So that's the president, the first lady, the vice president, the second lady. And prior to this, I'd actually never traveled any further than, I'd say, going west, New Orleans, going north, Washington, D.C. So, Advance gave me the opportunity to also travel the world. I can now say I've gone to India. I can now say I've gone to South Africa and all these amazing places through this one opportunity. So when it comes to the event logistics that we cover, right, it's airport arrivals. So coordinating with Air Force One, Secret Service, where the plane will chalk, where the press will be while the plane is arriving, motorcade logistics, the site logistics, so what the stage will look like, the backdrop, crowd logistics, making sure people, have access to tickets, ensuring that the line flows in a way that makes sense, thinking of, your ADA individuals. So every little detail of the event is covered by the Advance team. Your press logistics, what media will have access, what that will look like for them. So I just wanted to make sure I explained a little bit more about that, because it's not only something that happens in the White House, it happens across, Advance is offered across all government agencies. So when you think about events, you don't necessarily have to think about the traditional, hospitality industry in hotels and things of that nature, corporations, but there's also event planning within the government structure as well.
Awesome. So that is a very good point. So audience, students, you heard the point. Event is everywhere.
Absolutely.
So there is I always believe that education, health system, and our hospitality tourism events will never go away. Those industries, that is part of our human society.
Yes.
So definitely the event, and again, the 4-star and the 5-star difference is about the details.
Yes.
So there is the brand, there is the very well, I would say well prepared event planning that you have delivered. Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
You have touched on a little bit the next question I was about to ask you, but I will still mention this and then see if you would like to add any addition to this question.
Okay.
What you are a great resources about working from a government perspective. many would like to learn from you how events industry was different in the government. I think you mentioned a little bit, but do you have any additions that you would like to add to this question that students ask?
Yeah, the biggest addition is the budget. It is not unlimited. You have to stay within a very particular budget. So you'll find yourself, I think doing advanced, we are some of the most creative people because you have to figure out how to give people champagne on a beer budget. So we get very creative, and I think too, another thing to consider with events within government, sometimes you feel as if it gets a little boring because it's the same, flags everywhere. That's all you usually see with government events. But if you allow yourself to think outside of the box or to really tap into your creativity, you can create a backdrop that is beyond just flags and blue pipe and drape, right? So you can create a backdrop that was centered, if you do something that's outdoors and there's a barn in the back and you fly a flag from the barn, or you are beyond, just outside the Capitol building, or there's something at a school. And, so a lot of times people feel that, you get a little bored with government events, but there is a way to make them stand out. But part of the reason why you do see a lot of the same is due to budget, 9 times out of 10. So
wonderful. I think the takeaways from what you have just mentioned, one is think outside the box.
yes.
And two is how to use beer budget to provide
Mm-hmm.
experiences. And then 3 is, I think I might go ahead to apply for White House when I retire. If they take this kind of group. Okay. So, next one, a little bit, relax a little bit. Where did you get inspiration and knowledge from? Books, movies, speakers?
So I think most of my inspiration comes from my mother. And it's partly because I noticed her sacrifices for me. Obviously, being a single parent, she worked a graveyard shift so that she could be available to me during the day for school. She always wanted me to feel supported, and she always wanted to be at every event she could possibly be at so that I knew that I mattered. And so my mom was my main inspiration, and she's a daily inspiration, quite honestly, because when I think about all that she has poured into me, I strive to never let her down, and I strive to be a shining example of what her sacrifices lent themselves to. So she is definitely, just an overall inspiration for me. And I think when it comes to, work and knowledge, I have found myself, and especially in the midst of 2020, given the pandemic, given, all of the racial issues and unrest that we've experienced, I find myself leaning heavily on documentaries. And partly because, that is old, true footage. And I found myself wanting to know things for myself and not just having people telling me, from school or from this is how it is, this is what it was. So just really being, into documentaries and looking at all the old footage and just saying, oh, well, wow, who knew that things were like that back then? Or who really knew, how government was as crazy as it was back then. And I'm just thinking of one particular documentary called Slow Burn, and it was about the Nixon administration, and it just blew my mind, and I think about that now because I feel like years from now, we will also have that kind of footage, based on what we just experienced. And I hope people don't look at us and say, what were they thinking? I hope we are finally on track to have folks not think of us that way.
or the other way. We all are tough enough for being in such difficult situation. We all survive, and for event planner like you are making generational impacts. That's what we do as an educator here within the higher education system. Everything we say, somehow, if we talk to 100 students and perhaps 10 listen to the concepts and make the changes, then we are making the difference. So same thing, every event you are in charge, people will remember, and that's their lifetime experience. So yes, that's wonderful. So, and again, back to our very first question, how do you empower yourself? So watching the documentary, Miss Michelle Obama's her attitude, her encouragement, and your mom especially. So what else? How do you empower yourself?
Yeah, I think, you know, another way that I kind of empower myself is by having conversations like this, and especially with the younger generation, and explaining to them that these things are possible. Right? The more they're able to see themselves or someone who looks like them in these positions, the more they know that it's achievable. So talking to them and mentoring and just really taking the time to foster relationships with the younger generation. Because for me, if they do not have to be met with the same obstacles that I was, then that's a win. So if I can truly help them navigate certain situations so that they aren't defeated, you know, in certain aspects of life, then yeah, it's just something that feeds me and gives me that power to keep going.
Thank you. You are touching the world by touching the love, and touching the life, or one at a time, and sometimes one. So spread the life, spread the love. That's such a good mission.
Thank you.
You are pro, and you are doing it. Love it. And I have one thing I want to say to your mom. Chynna's mama, thank you so much. You know Chynna so well. Hope you are watching us, and I would like to make a phone call to you. So I want to tell your mom what a wonderful mom she has raised you. Such a so smart, so wise, and so powerful woman. Love it. Keep being a powerful woman. Okay, so being a gator. So now change the topic a little bit. What is the best advice you received before leaving UF? I know you mentioned Sarah. I'm sure Sarah.
I was gonna say that
Sarah
had to be.
Sarah told me she will join us, so I'm sure she's with us. So academic advisors, if you are listening to this, never underestimate what you mentioned to our students. Now, Chynna, tell us about the advice you received.
And I think on that same note, so, you know, obviously Sarah with the suggestion to apply for the White House internship, right? Some of the best advice that I received prior to leaving the university. But when I entered the University of Florida, I was actually a business major, and math and I did not agree. And so I sat down with an advisor, and, you know, she mentioned like, there's this major in event management. And I was just like, what? And she's like, yeah. She's like, so, you know, we discussed some of my interests, and I explained that like in high school, I planned all these events, and, you know, I really enjoyed it. And she's like, well, we have a major for that. And I was like, get out of here. Like I had no idea. So I think I would have to say that was also some of, you know, the best advice that I received. So truly listen to your advisors, and they are there to help you, and they are there to help you navigate college. So I owe a lot of my decision making and, you know, the things that charted my career path to my advisors back at UF.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. So being a gator, once a gator, always a gator, no matter which gator in which college. So this is a message to our business school students. If you don't feel that mathematics talk to you, or students from any other colleges, come to us. That is Chynna's takeaway. Thank you. Love it. Okay. So we have a very big arm. We welcome everybody. We are in the business of happiness. We want to make sure that you stay well, and we can deliver good messages and deliver the happiness to other groups as well. So the next question is, did networking help you as you graduated from the UF program? And the following up question is, what networking connections ended up being most valuable when you graduated? What about now?
So, the interesting thing is I would not consider myself a networker in the traditional sense of the word, right? During my internship, it took me a while to kind of warm up to staff, and not necessarily feel like I was bothering them because they were just always so busy with work. And something that I remember that made things easier to kind of become a little bit more open to networking was when we would have these brown bag sessions, which is, we'd have some of the staff sit in with the interns and they just tell us about themselves. They tell us their story, how they got there, what their interests were. And I think knowing someone's backstory is what helped me to become a little bit more comfortable with the idea of going to them and networking per se. I knew that there were folks who were Gator fans. So it was easy it was during the fall, it's during football season. So it's easy for me to say, oh, did you see that game last night? What'd you think? And it kind of opened the conversation up. So when I think about networking, I really don't go into it with the intention to just build a relationship to gain something from someone. I go into it with the intention of genuinely getting to know someone. And I think at that point, it becomes less of traditional networking, but just being genuine. And it goes a lot further. Those connections go a lot further, when they're more genuine instead of targeted, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can see, I think you are carrying that authentic leadership. Just think about when you're operating all the events for Obama's family, and that's really connecting to the whole world, not only California, not only Washington, D.C., but over the world. The celebrities, politicians, educators, girls, boys from all villages. And that is authentic leadership.
Right. Absolutely. And, I think about some of the relationships or connections that I've formed from doing Advance and being within the Obama world. And I wouldn't have gotten the job at Disney had I not formed those relationships through Advance on the Road, because we'd obviously do a lot of events with Disney and people came to know me and I was always nice and, a hard worker yet again, and willing to help people figure things out and just always there to lend a helping hand. So when the position became available at Disney, they reached out to me immediately. So I think, one thing that I would definitely recommend is, always treating people with kindness. And I know it sounds very cliche, but if you are just friendly and you are just striking up conversation to get to know people and you are kind, that connection is going to be extremely valuable. And that connection will carry you a lot further than if someone can kind of sense that you're just trying to get to know them to get something from them. So that, and in our line of work, your connections are truly, truly valuable.
I agree, totally agree. It's like the same thing when we teach in classroom, when students know we care, then students will listen.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And when we want to build up the network, and again, our people, our friends, they know we care, then we can build up our friendship and a long-term friendship.
Oh, yes.
So Chynna, here's one more question.
Okay.
What do you wish you would have known when you started in the event industry?
That's a good one. I think what I wish I would have known, this is how I'll say it. Although I'm really flexible, I wish I would have known the extent of just how flexible we have to be. Because things are constantly changing, right? Your host is constantly wanting something different. Your client thought they wanted this yesterday and they changed their minds today. There'll be natural things that come into effect, whether it's nature, and you always have to be ready to pivot on a dime. So I think early on, I wish that I would have been a lot more flexible. I am now, obviously. But in the beginning, you have this concept and you really want to, drill in on your concept, but it's like, at the end of the day, this is this person's event. So, you have to be amenable to whatever changes or, whatever last minute things they throw at you. And instead of having this one tracked idea of what the event should be, could be, just being very open to it being, constantly in flux and a flow until it's time.
Yeah. And that's because you are very organized. So that's why you
And I
already
think that's,
got
yeah.
your plan. Yeah, organized.
Right. It's like we've already put this much work into it, and now we have to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's very good hint. Okay. Be flexible, students.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Be flexible and flexible. Okay. How did your networking connections help? You mentioned about how you had a very good relationship when you were with Disney, and then now you are with Obama's family. And can you talk about how did your networking connection help, and how are your networking connections help?
Yeah. So I think the way I look at that is you never know when you may need to call on someone, right? Or when someone may need to call on you. So I do really cherish every opportunity I get to meet people. And at the end of the day, being in this orbit, in this world, you just never know what the day's going to bring. So essentially, if I can reach back out to someone that I met 10 years ago, but because we fostered this genuine relationship, it's okay to reach back out, and they remember me and they're willing to do things, and not just because I'm connected to the Obamas, right? People are willing to do things because of me and the type of person that I am and what I've shown them or what I've given to them. So that's kind of how, I would say that the networking has helped, or these connections have helped me, without pinpointing a specific connection. But truly being genuine and fostering relationships that are lasting. Because quite honestly, there have been multiple times where I've reached back out to somebody from 5 years ago, and there was no hesitation in them helping us out, or promoting something that we needed them to promote, or attending an event, or being a part of something that we needed them to be a part of. So definitely take the time to foster connection beyond just one-offs.
Love it. Yeah. Take time to foster relations.
Yes.
And make those everlasting friendship relationships.
Yeah.
Love it. So now again, for our students, what advice, I think you have touched on so many good elements. So in conclusion, what advice would you give to students to achieve a successful path in a career?
Yeah. So put in the work, put in the work. Honestly, treat others the way you want to be treated. I always make it a point that no matter how small someone may make me feel at times, or how offensive someone has been, I remember that person's actions and how they made me feel, and I vow to never impose those feelings on anyone else. I vow to be better and do better. So between hard work, between, again, just being kind, it gets you far. I'm trying to tell you guys. So between hard work, being kind, being resilient, because you may not always, get a yes on your first opportunities. You may get quite a few no's before you end up getting a yes. But maintaining resilience, and then also being professional. It goes a long way.
Yes, professionalism. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, being a gator, we are tough. Yes. Yeah. So a few no's, we still can survive.
You can still do it. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So this is another questions. What are the greatest stumbling blocks students can avoid when taking a government position? So you were the intern with a dual degree in our hospitality events, also with political science, and with such a position in White House. So what would be your advice?
So I think some of the stumbling blocks that we encounter would be going into government with the goal of pleasing everyone, because there will always, always, always be someone who does not agree or someone who isn't happy with what you're doing. It's just the nature of the political game, right? And even when you're making decisions in which the results, can have the best possible outcomes for the most people, there will always be someone who doesn't like it. So you have to go into politics with tough skin and knowing, 9 times out of 10, someone's going to be unhappy, regardless of how good my intentions are, and being okay with that. And I also think we have to go into these things being our authentic selves. We've been taught to hide so much of ourselves and only project certain things. And I think it's a shame, because we should not be ashamed of our stories, and we should not be ashamed of our past. Sorry, it's our power, right? It's what makes us unique. It's what allows us, you know, to truly connect in ways that we haven't before. When somebody understands a little bit more about you and they understand your upbringing, you connect in a way.
I love it.
Yeah.
Chynna. I think probably I have mentioned 100. I love it from beginning till now, but I really love it. The takeaway for me, and I believe, I perceive for our students will be, well, we are in our Gator Nation, so we are well connected, and now
yes.
Gator Nation, we are Gator Universe, and being a Gator, a true Gator, authentic Gator. What do we have? Of course, tough skin. I cannot find another one has an even tougher skin than we have. So yes, being an authentic Gator with tough skin, and we are Gator Universe. So this is my takeaway. Love your lesson. Thank you. So Chynna, the next one, I would like to shift it to a little bit to talk about diversity and inclusion, because a part of our today's program, Dean Reed is a visionary leader. So under his leadership, right now we have Dean's IDEA Council. It stands for Diversity, Inclusion, IDEA, Equity, and Access. So we have this council, and I would like to hear what's your opinion on the current efforts for inclusion and diversity from your observation, either in White House or in general. What do you think?
Yeah, so I'm hopeful that all of the work that's going into diversity and inclusion right now will be a lasting effort, right? And not just a fad. Because representation makes a huge, huge difference. And especially for young people, for them to see someone who looks like them in positions of power and actually being successful in their positions, it signals to them that things are achievable, that this is achievable, that it gives them something to aspire to. Mrs. Obama always says, there is power in seeing who you can become, but you have to know that these paths and these people exist. So my hope is that, the current work that's being done in diversity and inclusion, will continue on, and I'm hopeful that that work is going to ensure that these young people are seeing themselves and that representation is always there.
I agree. Amen to that. Yes, it's a generational work, and we are one human being. Well, this is the one thing we all really
all interconnected. Yes.
Yes, connected. Yes, and be respectful. Yes, toward each other. Yes. Thank you. So now I'm going to shift to a little bit. What advice do you have for students and the young professionals who are minorities to navigate well in this industry? So this is a question from our students directly.
Yeah. So this is what I'll say to the minority students. We are huge contributors to the workplace. You know, whether or not people choose to acknowledge that, we are huge contributors to the workplace. And I believe that we have a different narrative to offer. And we need to have seats at the table, especially at the levels where decisions are being made that will have direct impacts on our industry and on our communities. You know, we have to be present in order to speak to our own issues and address the things that are totally foreign to others. So don't ever let someone make you feel like you don't belong. Don't ever let anyone, you know, make you feel like there's no room for you or there isn't a seat at the table for you, because we absolutely deserve to be in every room we walk into.
Yes, stand tall and understand and embrace our identity, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yes. So right now, one more industry question, then we will turn the Q&A to our audience. So audience, if you could type your question in the Q&A window, and Chynna will get back to you in a few minutes. So this question, how has COVID-19 affected the events industry from your perspectives?
Oh, yeah. So I think
it's a big question.
You know, I think COVID-19 has caused us to look at things through a different lens. You know, the pandemic has truly wreaked havoc on our industry, but the industry isn't dead, right? It's just evolving. We are some of the best people, and like I mentioned earlier, to handle adapting to change, right? We are built for that. We are built to adapt to change, because there's constant changes within our everyday, you know, within our everyday field. So honestly, you know, I just really hope that the students aren't deterred from what the pandemic has done to us, because our industry isn't dead. You know, again, we've evolved and we now have to kind of get into the mindset of putting on events from a virtual perspective, right? That's just the nature of it for the next few years until we can get things back to a safe place. But we are built for this. We are built to evolve. We are built to adapt to this change. So just, you know, believe in our industry, believe in yourselves, and know that we're going to make it out of this, okay?
Yes. And again, the good news is I have mentioned this during our previous EFTI.Talk. There is no such everlasting virus. So the virus will pass and all shall pass, but humanity will stay. Healthcare will stay, education will stay, tourism, hospitality, that is a big part of a human beings' celebrations will stay. That's why when we are well off, we want to spend time, quality time with our family, beloved one, to enjoy the quality food, wonderful vacation. So now I'm going to turn the stage to our audience, and we have 2 Q&A, but also a few chat. I'm going to, I know Chynna, you are, you can see the chat too, but our Sarah is here. She said, I'm here, smiling face. How exciting it is to see you, thriving and inspiring. So proud of the wonderful professional and role model you are, Chynna, you are. For so many young girls, you continue to amaze. I have happy tears today.
Oh.
And the faculty members in our THEM, everybody has tears today. And I remember when I had a conversation with you, I had tears in my eyes. And I almost bounced out of my chair because I was so touched, so happy to our conversation. We have a few notes from our audience in the chat. What day-to-day routines do you have in place to keep yourself organized and on track with your events and life in general?
Yes. So I live by list and planners and reminders. So I literally have a monthly planner, a little small one that I keep in my purse that keeps track of all of my personal stuff, my doctor's appointments and hair appointments and, all those things. Obviously, prior to COVID, that's a little different now. But that's what kept my personal life organized. And then when it comes to work and the events, I constantly keep a running to-do list. And, I wake up every morning and I'm looking at this list. And, I shift things around based on what's time sensitive, what needs a response today, what can wait until tomorrow, what I'm waiting for information on before I can continue, before I can hit send on this email or send something out or share anything. But there's also a tool that's been very helpful. We use Microsoft Outlook in our office, and it's called Cortana. And essentially what it does is every morning I get an email and it's a productivity assistant is what they call it. And what this thing has done is gone through my entire inbox, and it lets me know who I owe responses to based on me saying, I'll get back to you, or I'll send this, to you tomorrow or whatever. And it shows me that. So every morning I can start by saying, okay, this is who I need to kind of, get back to in addition to my to-do list. So that's been very helpful. And then I'm constantly setting reminders, just given the nature of my job. Things are just always coming at me. So I have to write things down, and I have to remind myself, okay, today this is due, tomorrow I need to address this, and your mind can only retain so much, your memory can only retain so much. So between to-do list and reminders and a planner, that is truly how I keep myself organized.
Thank you for sharing. And then our next question, I think lots of students would like to learn, would be, what advice would you have for students looking for when applying for internships?
Wow. So, I'm going to be quite honest. When I, was looking for my internship, the only thing outside of knowing that I wanted to be in Atlanta, the only thing that I was looking for was descriptions that mentioned the word event. I was very naive in the sense that, I was just like, okay, anything that says events, let me look into this, let me look into that. But I also knew I did not necessarily want to do a traditional, internship with a wedding planning company or internship, within a hotel. I wanted to do something that was a little bit more out of the box. So I did sit down and I said, what organizations, what companies, what fields and industries have events? And quite honestly, it's every single one of them. So I went, and I looked into the sports arenas, and I'm like, okay, what kind of event internships do they offer? So between NBA, NFL, MLB, and applied for those. Then, I thought about radio stations and the fact that they also have to host events. So I applied for radio station internships. And then obviously, Sarah had mentioned the White House government internship. But, the advice that I would give is to, sometimes you are fortunate enough to land opportunities that you truly, truly are passionate about in cities and states that, where you want it to be. And there are other times that won't necessarily be the case. So just want to be very realistic about that. But I do think that you should lead with what you're passionate about. Where do you see yourself? Post-graduation, where would you like to be? So maybe start looking for internships within that city and state, but the other part of that is if the internship is unpaid, then perhaps you want to look at internship opportunities in places, that work better for you financially. So there are a bunch of different factors to consider when you're applying for internships. But first and foremost, if you can afford to, lead with your passion, lead with where you think you want to be, or the field or industry that you think you want to go into post-graduation, so that you can get that experience under your belt. And you may decide that, hey, nope, after that internship, this is not where I want to go. I want to try something different.
Very good tips. Thank you, Chynna. We also have two very similar questions, but I'm going to put into one. How did you motivate yourself whenever you felt any discouragement during your journey to eventually working with Michelle Obama, and very similar. How do you motivate yourself when you are feeling discouraged? And I wanted to say how grateful I am that you took the time out of your day to talk to us.
Oh, of course I'm going to take time out to speak to fellow Gators. You know, so when it comes to the motivation piece, reflection is what helps me motivate. When I sit back and I think about just my life in general, not necessarily all of the accolades and achievements in that part of my story, but I just think about the fact that, you know, I was a product of a single parent household. And my father actually went to prison when I was 3 years old. So, you know, when you think about that upbringing, it wasn't necessarily guaranteed that I would follow the path that I'm currently on right now. You know, when I think about my struggles in school, when I think about, you know, being denied from certain positions, but yet I'm still here, you know, so when I reflect over my life, that's what kind of motivates me to keep going, because I'm like, although denied this, or although, you know, given my upbringing, you know, pretty much you're cast out from the beginning, you know, I still have overcome those things. And that's what motivates me to keep going, because I'm just like, there is a bigger purpose over my life, right? There are things that I have achieved that I am proud of, graduating high school, graduating college, you know, simple little things that are not necessarily guaranteed. We got to learn how to give ourselves a pat on the back for those small accomplishments in our mind, but those are huge, you know, when you look at life in general, because they aren't promised. So that's what kind of motivates me, just taking the time to reflect over life.
Yeah, thank you, Chynna.
Mm-hmm.
I think every moment you reflected on your life, and you always reflect on your life, that really show how deep that you want to become the person that you ought to be, and you create the opportunity. You do not just sit there and wait for the opportunities to come to me. You prepare yourself for the opportunity. That's such a wonderful life lesson for all of us to learn. So this is the last question. How much do you think THEM, the program of studies, prepare you to work in the event industry?
Oh, it 100% prepared me. You know, so I actually would keep a lot of my old notes in my textbooks. And when I started getting into the field of advance, and we, you know, discussed certain things, and I was like, wait a minute, I go home and I pull out my book and I was like, okay, we did learn about this. And, you know, here's something on budget, and here's something on this. And so these, my course studies truly did help me, you know, navigate the events world, you know, and quite honestly, just the experience, the internship, you know, being in these spaces, and seeing how these events come together, and learning a different style of events. So, you know, it was a culmination of all of it. So the studies, the coursework, but also being in the field, you know, helped prepare me.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Chynna, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you. I'm giving you a virtual hug. Kisses. Thank you so much for being our speaker. Again, I would love for you to continuously connect with our students, our Gators. And I know your life story is so, not only one story, but your stories are so inspirational. I'm so touched, and I'm so grateful for you making time to be with us. Thank you so much, Chynna. And
of course.
Thank you for your time and insights, Chynna. Really, I really appreciate so much. Friends, colleagues, and students, I appreciate you and your presence. I hope you enjoy our webinar as much as I have enjoyed you, and especially our speaker, Chynna. Look forward to seeing you all again on Monday, March 15th. And so, Chynna, before we all depart, you have one more thing you want to say to the audience. What will you tell them?
Well, I just wanted to say, you know, I am happy to be a resource, you know, so feel free if you want to connect with me. I'm available. I will make the time. Trust me. But I do want to just encourage everyone to continue the good fight. You know, just because we've experienced what we've experienced within this past year, do not let it deter you. Do not let this, discourage you from moving or continuing on with the field and events. We're going to be okay. Trust me, we're going to be okay. So I hope that more students actually join our college, because it was one of the best, and it still is.
Awesome. So remember, HHP is the best. THEM is the best. So we open our arms. We want you all to join us, and Chynna will be in our corner. Thank you so much, Chynna. We will come to see you wherever you and the Obamas, and we want to support you in every way we could as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chynna. You all have a wonderful day.